Did Jesus really exist, or was he merely a legendary figure created by the faith and imagination of his followers? For many, he is a spiritual symbol, a presence that transcends time and culture. The figure of Jesus has profoundly impacted history, influencing nations, cultures, and millions of people over the centuries. However, beyond personal beliefs, we may ask, is there evidence that attests to the historical existence of Jesus? In this video, we will explore this topic broadly and objectively, going beyond the pages of the Bible to dive into the world of historical evidence. Prepare yourself for a revealing journey in which we will present historical documents, testimonies from ancient chroniclers, and archaeological discoveries that offer a more solid portrait of Jesus of Nazareth. This investigation aims to reveal that Jesus is not only a spiritual figure, but also a historical reality. To understand the importance of this evidence, we need to place Jesus in the context of the 1st century AD, a turbulent period in the history of the Roman Empire and the entire region of Palestine. During this time, the empire faced both political and religious upheavals. Among the Jewish people, messianic expectations were intense. They awaited a liberator who would come to redeem his people and establish a kingdom of peace and justice. It was in this environment that Jesus appeared, with a message of love, forgiveness, and transformation that resonated deeply with people. One of the earliest and most important historical documents to mention Jesus outside of Christian texts is the testimony of Flavius Josephus. Josephus, a Jewish historian born in AD 37, wrote extensively about the history of the Jewish people and referred to Jesus in his work Antiquities of the Jews, written around AD 90. Josephus mentions Jesus of Nazareth as a wise man, known for extraordinary deeds and for being condemned to death by Pontius Pilate. Although the passage about Jesus has sparked debate among scholars, some versions show possible Christian interpolations, it is widely accepted that Josephus did indeed refer to Jesus, providing an external and independent testimony about the existence of this historical figure. Another important Roman chronicler who mentioned Jesus was Tacitus, regarded as one of the greatest historians of ancient Rome. In his work Annals, written around AD 116, Tacitus describes the persecution of Christians under Emperor Nero after the Great Fire of Rome in AD 64. He notes that Christians were followers of Christ, who was executed during the governorship of Pontius Pilate in Judea. This account not only corroborates the existence of Jesus, but also confirms the impact of his followers in the decades following his death, showing that his influence had already spread to Rome by this time. Since Tacitus was known for his rigor and for criticizing both Christians and Jews, this mention provides an external and impartial perspective on Jesus, strengthening his historicity. In addition to these two significant accounts, we find mentions of Jesus in the writings of ancient authors such as Pliny the Younger and the satirist Lucian of Samosata. Pliny, in a letter to Emperor Trajan, describes Christians as a distinct group and mentions that they worshipped Christ as a deity. This evidence also suggests the existence of a community of Jesus followers and a clear devotion to his figure. When we turn to the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we find detailed accounts of Jesus' life and teachings. These documents were written between AD 60 and 100, relatively close to the events they narrate. While the Gospels have a spiritual dimension, they also contain rich descriptions of the social, cultural, and geographical context of the time, including the names of cities, local customs, and historical figures such as Herod, Pilate, and Caiaphas. These historical elements suggest that beyond their religious purpose, the Gospels also serve as sources of information about the period in which Jesus lived. Another fundamental set of documents is the Epistles of Paul, written between AD 49 and 67, which mention Jesus in a clear and historical way. Paul of Tarsus, initially a persecutor of Christians, had an experience that transformed him into one of Christianity's greatest missionaries. In his letters, he makes several references to Jesus as a real person, discussing specific aspects of his life, such as his death and resurrection. As these texts were written only 2 decades after Jesus' death, they constitute some of the earliest sources about him and demonstrate the formation of a community of followers deeply convinced of his existence and divinity. In addition to written documents, archaeological discoveries provide historical context that helps us understand the environment in which Jesus lived. Excavations in Capernaum have revealed structures from that time, including a synagogue where Jesus is believed to have taught and a house that many associate with the Apostle Peter. In Nazareth, a structure identified as an ancient dwelling from the Roman period was found, suggesting what the living conditions were like in the village where Jesus grew up. Artifacts such as the James ossuary, a burial box inscribed with the phrase, "James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus," though still controversial, raise the possibility of a direct connection to Jesus' family. Another aspect that reinforces the historicity of Jesus is the rapid growth of Christianity in the early centuries. Within just a few decades, Jesus' message spread across the Roman Empire, challenging the dominant religion and surviving intense persecutions. This phenomenon is especially remarkable considering that Jesus left no writings of his own, and his earliest followers were mostly ordinary people with little political or economic influence. The impact of Jesus' figure on history is undeniable. From historical records to traditions preserved over centuries, everything points to a character who transcends legend. Even critical authors acknowledge that the evidence points to a man who lived in Galilee and preached an innovative message. While some layers of the accounts may contain interpretative and symbolic elements, the historical figure of Jesus is consistent with the profile of a religious teacher whose message was powerful enough to give rise to one of the world's largest religions. These historical accounts, along with traditions and archaeological evidence, strengthen the case that Jesus is undoubtedly a documented figure in history. He's not only a matter of faith, but also part of historical investigation, a figure who has transcended centuries, inspiring followers and influencing events throughout human history. His legacy continues to shape lives, cultures, and nations. We invite you to reflect on the importance of this figure, who is not just a symbol of devotion, but a presence recorded in human history.